story be told.
Hello humans, my name is Dael Kingsmill and I've got another mythology video for you today. If you happen to be new here, stick around, check it out. Ancient stories, coming in hot. That's definitely a long-term tagline and catchphrase and not just something that I made up just then and have already begun to regret. The story of Castor and Pollux, maybe you've heard of them. If you haven't, you probably have heard of the constellation Gemini, one of the Greek zodiac star signs, the twins. This is them, we're talking about them. Now, where to start with Castor and Pollux? Castor and Pollux were twin brothers born from eggs. This, of course, is the same egg batch as those from Leda and the Swan. Zeus, with his weird bird fetish, approaches Leda as a swan. They get it on. She lays a bunch of eggs. Somehow, only 2 of the 4 children born from the eggs are children of Zeus. Let's not even get into how that works. But yes, one egg bore the children Helen and Clytemnestra, while the other bore Castor and Pollux. Helen and Pollux being the 2 who were of divine birth. Helen, I'm sure you've heard of Helen. She's of Troy. The entirety of the Trojan War was about her. Because she was so beautiful that Paris, a guy from Troy, just had to marry her. There's this whole backstory with an apple and a wedding. I made a video on it. I'll put a card up. So anyway, Helen, very desirable. So desirable, in fact, that many people have kidnapped her. For example, Theseus and his best bro buddy, Perithous, kidnapped Helen before going and trying to kidnap Persephone. That's another story I've done. There's a card, it's right there. Boy, I didn't think that this would get complicated. But not to worry, just yet. Castor and Pollux went and they rescued her, brought her on back to Sparta. They are her brothers, they have her back. Or do they? Amongst all the other adventures that Castor and Pollux got up to, like joining the Argonauts, there was a particular team-up that went downhill. Castor and Pollux teamed up with their cousins, Idas and Lynceus, who were also brothers, and the 4 of them decided to work together to go and steal a bunch of cattle. They really didn't need to be stealing cattle, but they were doing it. Their genius plan or whatever works out, and they have this whole huge herd to split up between them. But here's where they make a mistake. They entrust Idas with the division of the cattle that they have stolen. And what Idas decides is, he says, let's not divvy this up into 4 groups. That's ridiculous. Let's just split it into 2, right? And he took a cow and he cut it up into 4 huge portions of meat that he cooked up. And he said, all right, lads, we'll do it this way. Whoever finishes his huge cow portion first gets 1/2 of the cattle that we've stolen, and whoever finishes second gets the other half of the cattle that we've stolen. Castor and Pollux are like, this is a lot of meat. I mean, sure, weird way to divide it, but sure, we'll hop on board. Why, you shouldn't have, but I guess they couldn't anticipate that Idas has a superpower of being able to eat just so much so fast, because he scarfed down his portion whole and then took his brothers and scarfed Lynceus's down whole as well, instantly, before anyone could even, pick up a fork. And so Lynceus and Idas took the whole herd of cattle that the 4 of them had stolen together, and so a lifelong blood feud began. One day, the whole family are invited as guests to Helen's place for dinner. So it's Helen and Menelaus, her husband, and Castor and Pollux, and Lynceus and Idas, and also Paris is there because he'd come across the sea for a bit of a visit. I wonder where that's leading. Now, during dinner, Menelaus is suddenly called away on some very important business, and Helen is left in charge of everyone. And I can only imagine the really awkward silence around that dinner table as Castor and Pollux are glaring daggers into the super-powered eyes of Lynceus and his brother. I didn't mention, Lynceus has super eyes. We'll get to that in a minute. Helen's trying to provide some chit-chat and Paris is awkwardly sweating on the other end of the table. What a lovely evening. At some point during this, Castor and Pollux suddenly realize what an opportunity they have before them, because the whole herd of cattle are unattended right now, because Lynceus and Idas are right here. So they make some crummy excuse like, oh, we forgot about that, we have a thing that we really have to, we're just gonna head out. It's been lovely. It's been so great seeing all of you. And they slip out and they rush off to their cousin's house to go and steal those cows. But it doesn't take long for Idas and Lyncaeus to work out what's happened, and suddenly they go, "Ah, the cow! You know what? It is getting so late. Thank you, Helen, for having us. Paris, lovely to meet you. You're a great dude. We're just gonna, we gotta go if we're gonna, I've got work tomorrow, so we gotta go." And they run out after Castor and Pollux. So yeah, this entire misadventure is absolutely the way that Paris managed to kidnap Helen and take her away to Troy with her. But Castor and Pollux were great heroes, a master of horsemen and a champion boxer. They'd rescued Helen from kidnappings before, they could do it again. You may or may not know that Castor and Pollux are not in the story of Troy, and here's why. Realizing that their cousins would be catching up with them, Castor and Pollux hide in the hollow trunk of a tree, waiting to ambush Lyncaeus and Idas as they come past. But Lyncaeus and his supervision climbs up a tree and looks all around the entire world, because apparently he can do that, and his micro X-ray eyes see off in the distance, aha, they're hiding in this tree. So they are not fooled by none of it. Idas and Lyncaeus zero in directly on that tree trunk and launch a surprise attack, striking down Castor almost immediately. Pollux manages to throw his spear into Lyncaeus, killing him, but if it weren't for his divine parentage and Zeus's impeccable sense of nepotism, he probably wouldn't have survived. It was only because Zeus struck down Idas with a thunderbolt at that moment that Pollux managed to win the encounter. And in like a rare, genuinely touching moment for Greek mythology, Pollux rushed over to the body of his brother and begged Zeus to let them die together, knowing that he himself, Pollux, was immortal thanks to Zeus being his daddy. Zeus rejects this idea, straight up, but he does offer Pollux two choices. Either Pollux can come back with him to Olympus and live as an immortal god up there with them, as the purity of his blood allows, or, alternatively, he could do a share time kind of a sitch with his dead brother, split his immortality between them, and they take turns on a day-to-day basis, one of them living in Hades, or being dead, living, unliving in Hades, as the mortals do, while the other spends their day up in the sunshiny Beams town of Mount Olympus. And then they would trade off every day. And Pollux immediately, without hesitation, splits his immortality with Castor. And to commemorate the act, Zeus put them in the sky as the constellation of Gemini, the twins. That's like genuinely tragic and kind of beautiful. I mean, all the stuff before that is classic, silly Greek mythology, but it's a nice ending, really. So that's the story of the Dioscuri, or Castor and Pollux. Castor and Polydeuces, if you go with the Greek names. I just like the sound of Castor and Pollux. I think it's got a nice ring to it. I hope that you enjoyed that. If you did, you know how YouTube works. It's got all of the things. Please do use all of the things, because it really helps me out as a video making person. If you'd like to check out my Patreon, I've got one of those linked in the description. You can come hit me up on social media in all of the places. I love it. I got a Twitter problem. Apart from that, I do believe that's it. I'm done. Email this to your grandma and I'll see you some other time.
Long live his name, and long live his glory, and long may his story be told. I should be a pop star.